Hey, what's up? It's your old pal, Mr. Cook, and we're going to work on the Unit 3 quiz review. And this unit is on rational functions. So with rational functions, we just need to make sure that we factor like crazy. So make sure that you're factoring all of these polynomials that we see. That's how you can, get these answers pretty easily. Okay, anyways, number one, simplify and state the excluded values. The excluded values, once again, just come from the denominator. Make sure that you set the denominator equal to 0 after you factor it, and then you can solve for the excluded values. So I'll probably do these ones like section by section. So do these ones first and then simplify. I'll probably go like by 4s or something like that after that. Okay, so for the first part, this is just the same thing as the 3.1. So if you want some additional practice problems with simplifying and excluded values, just go to the video on 3.1. You can see a bunch of these worked out. So factor the top part first. 4a and 4 are both divisible by 4, so I factor out a 4. And if I divide out a 4 there, I just have an a. If I divide out a 4 there, I just have a 1, so plus 1. And in the denominator, I already have an a plus 1. So that means I'm going to be able to factor out the a plus 1s, but let's get our excluded values first. So to get the excluded values, just take the factored denominators. So that's going to be a plus 1 in this case. Say that it cannot be equal to 0, and then solve. So we just subtract 1 from both sides, and we found out our excluded value is that a cannot be equal to -1. So -1 is our lone excluded value for this one. Now let's simplify the expression. So the a plus 1s cancel out, and we just have 4. So 4 is our simplified rational expression. Okay, moving on, number 2. I have a quadratic in the bottom. I better factor that. So the top part already is a factor, n minus 4. Let's see what's going on in the bottom. So I need to find numbers that multiply together to be 24 and add together to be -10. So that's going to be -4 and -6. So that means I end up with n minus 4 and also n minus 6. So notice that the n minus 4s are going to cancel out, but first, once I factor it, I got to find the excluded values. So I take every factor, and I say that it cannot be equal to 0. The reason that I say that it can't be equal to 0 is because that breaks some math rules. Because if I plug in a number to get 0 in the bottom, that means that I'm dividing by 0. So that's why we work so hard to find these excluded values, because they don't take part in the domain of the rational function. So if I have n minus 4 cannot be 0, that means that n cannot be equal to +4 because I add 4 to both sides. And then also if n minus 6 cannot be 0, if I add 6 to both sides, I find out that n cannot be equal to 6. So those are my two excluded values, 4 and 6. Now let's simplify it. So the n minus 4s cancel out. And you have to remember this, okay? When we cancel out something and it's the only thing that's in the numerator, secretly it's also multiplying times 1. So there's going to be a 1 still left over in the numerator, in this case in the numerator because it cancels out. So the 1's going to be there, and then we still have that n minus 6 in the bottom. And this is the simplified expression. That's as simplified as it gets. So once again, if you need to practice some more of these, they're in 3.1. And there's already a video that's up on YouTube where I go over like a ton of problems from 3.1. Okay, so that's it, and then we're going to move on to multiplication and division.